Cohen of the Mossad and some others. Who are they seeing in the administration? And do you plan to be conveying, or do officials plan to be conveying to them the thought that Israel may be actually actively undercutting your effort to get the Iran deal back together?
I'm happy to get back to you as we try to be transparent around here, who they're meeting with, and check with our national security team about that, David, and others who are interested in that. I will say that we will, of course, brief them. I'm certain it will be a part of the conversation, as we regularly do, on the status of negotiations. We just concluded the second round. That will likely be multi-round negotiations in Vienna, and we will update them, I would expect, on those discussions and the progress being made there. But in terms of other components of the discussion, I will see what we plan to read out from those meetings. Go ahead.
Two questions on behalf of colleagues who can't be here, quick
Sure.
ones, and one of my own. For the capital gains tax increase, when would that take effect?
Again, I know there's lots of questions and interest. I understand it. I'm with you for it. But we will have many fact sheets, many pages of fact sheets, many briefings to get you all of the details you would like.
And on AstraZeneca, the doses, are those being given specifically to countries or to COVAX? What is the process for determining who gets those? Does Canada get any of those? Other countries?
Sure. We're working through what the process will look like, and we will consider a range of options from our partner countries, and of course, much of that will be through direct relationships.
Okay. And the other question I had was, you mentioned two of the president's goals was to bring the country together and end the pandemic. Those are obviously the two big goals that he has.
Get Americans back to work.
Which is obviously connected to ending the pandemic. And you see this vaccine hesitancy among Republicans. You see slower vaccination rates in Republican-led states.
Mm-hmm.
How does the president view those two goals as intertwined? And does do they have to can you not have one without the other? I guess is what I'm saying.
That's an interesting question. I would say that the president believes he's got to govern for all people, and that includes, of course, getting the pandemic under control, which is certainly not impacting people through a political prism. So our efforts are to increase vaccine confidence, I should say, across a range of communities where we've seen some concern or some question. Now, we have seen in recent data that there has been large increases among not just communities of color, but also more conservative communities, people who have had a neighbor take the vaccine, who have seen the people who are vaccinated able to have dinner together in their home, as is part of the CDC guidance. And so that's encouraging. But the president is going to continue to govern for all people, to work to address the crises we're facing that are not Democratic or Republican crises. They are crises for the American public, whether that is the pandemic, people who are out of work, the climate crisis, racial injustice in our country. Those are the four he's identified as being central to his presidency. Hi, David.
Hey, Jen. Hey, a question on unity. You talk about, or earlier you said you wanted to bring, or the president wanted to bring the country back together. So I guess the question is, he has not met with House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, according to Kevin McCarthy. What does that say about unity? And also there are some other legislative issues as it relates to H.R. 1 and a commission to study packing the Supreme Court, as you would say. And there's a lot of other lists as well, budget reconciliation. So there's a lot of folks, you talk about tens of millions of people, they're concerned about that this doesn't seem like unity at all.
Do you think tens of millions of people are concerned about him not meeting with Kevin McCarthy?
No, I think tens of millions of people are concerned about H.R. 1 and budget reconciliation and going with that 50 vote threshold. I think that was a concern. I'm not sure the
polling bears that out, but I will say that the president's view is that bringing the country together is bringing the American people together. So when I say he is focused on bringing people together, bringing Democrats and Republicans together, he's not talking about solving bipartisanship in this zip code here. He is talking about proposing policies that address the crises that we're facing, whether it's getting the pandemic under control, putting people back to work. A lot of those policies he's proposed, whether it's the American Rescue Plan or the American Jobs Plan, are supported by the vast majority of the American public. Democrat, Republican, Independent. They certainly want to see him working with Republicans and Democrats and he's absolutely doing everything he can to do that. He's had a number of Republicans down here to the Oval Office. He's looking for it. We're going to be reviewing their proposals, and I think certainly people see him rolling up his sleeves and ready to work with people of all different viewpoints.
Real quick, why not separate the infrastructure bill the Republicans have, whatever it is, $800 billion or so? Why not just take that, call it unity, call it a deal, and then move on to some of the other legislative priorities within the total construct?
Well, David, as you know, you need 60 votes. You can talk to Republicans in the Senate and see how many votes they have. But I will say that where we are now is that we are certainly taking a look at the proposal. Right now, there's deep in the weeds, sometimes nerdy conversations between staffers, members of Congress. We have lots of follow-up questions. I'm sure they have lots of follow-up questions. We're sharing ideas. That's actively happening now. He'll invite some members next week, bipartisan members, to come to the Oval Office and have a discussion about it and what the path forward looks like.
Thank you.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you, ma'am. I have one question about foreign policy and then another about COVID here. So the first one is, in tapes obtained by the New York Times, Iran's foreign minister says that former Secretary of State John Kerry informed him that Israel attacked Iranian interests at least 200 times. As the Secretary has shifted roles, he still continues to represent the United States on a world stage. Does the President have any comment or reaction to Kerry telling the Iranians about covert military action on the part of Israel?
We're not going to comment on leaked tapes.
Okay. And then my second question is, I've heard from a number of governors who are frustrated that they haven't heard directly from President Biden on these weekly coordinating COVID calls. Why hasn't he joined those weekly calls?
And how many governors?
So what?
How many governors have you heard from?
I've heard from a number, but how many times?
Like how many? 1, 2?
Well, I'm actually curious to see how many times he's joined those calls, and if there's a reason why.
It was never his, but I'm curious to answer to your question too.
It's in our story.
I think there were 2 in your story.
There were 2 in my story, and there were others who didn't go on the record, but we reflected that in the story.
Okay, so 2 governors and some anonymous governors. I will say that the intention was never for the weekly call, the COVID call that is led by our COVID coordinator, to be a part, for the President to be leading that call. That the intention was for our COVID coordinator to be providing an update directly from the President, directly from our work across the federal government to get the pandemic under control. And what we've done in that call is provided weekly updates on the number of doses that are going out to states, which have increased nearly every week. We're talking about an average of about 28 million out to states now. It's an opportunity to have an engagement, have a discussion about where there are challenges in the system, how to better operationalize, better communicate, which was a complaint that we came in and tried to solve when we came into office. So that was the intention. I can assure you that the American public, governors hear quite a great deal from the President on his plans to get the pandemic under control, and he it's in excellent hands with his COVID coordinator.
To clarify, he has not joined. Does he have any plans in the future to join those calls?
We've never conveyed it as a call that would be a part of his agenda, so I'm not sure there's like a big controversy here.
Okay.
But
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Can you confirm reports that the CIA Director Bill Burns was in Iraq, in Baghdad, meeting with Iranian officials into foreign minister's home?
I would point you to the CIA for confirmation of anything about his schedule.
Okay, because he was somebody who led the discussions in 2015, and currently Foreign Minister Zarif is in Iraq too. So I'd be interested to know whether the 2 of them are planning to meet. Is that something that you're able to discuss?
And again, I'd point you to the CIA and his team there for any details of his schedule.
Another question
Sure.
on Guatemala.
Go ahead.
So earlier today, Secretary Blinken announced sanctions on some Guatemalan officials.
Mm-hmm.
Are there other sanctions that the administration is weighing for other Northern Triangle countries now? And how is this expected to affect the discussions that the Vice President is having later today on migration cooperation?
Sure. Well, the sanctions that were announced today, which everybody may not have seen, I know there's a lot going on, is on one current and one former Guatemalan government official for their role in corruption in Guatemala. And these sanctions support efforts by the people of Guatemala to end the scourge of corruption as part of the U.S. government's commitment to support improvements in governance in Guatemala. And as the vice president's virtual bilat with the president today indicates, we are focused on working with Guatemala and other partners in the region to improve conditions and address the root causes of migration. Today's actions were also taken in close coordination with the United Kingdom, which has today established a new anti-corruption sanctions regime. But we are confident we will continue to be able to work with the Guatemalan leadership on areas of agreement, areas where there is opportunity, but we also are not going to hold back when actions warrant sanctions, as they did in this case on the grounds of corruption.
Do you expect the Vice President to meet with El Salvador President Bukele?
Well, I know she has a virtual bilat next week with the Mexican president, and I expect she'll have more in the coming weeks, but I don't have anything to preview for you today. Go ahead all the way in the back.
Yes, I have a question for myself and then two for colleagues who can't be in the room.
Okay.
First, you've laid out a number of domestic agenda items for the president's speech on Wednesday. How much can we expect that he will speak about foreign policy?
He will certainly talk about foreign policy in his speech and reiterate his objectives and commitments to rebuilding our place in the world, regaining the United States seat at the table. I don't have more to preview for you than that, but it will certainly be a part of the speech.
Okay, and let me see. What is your response to the criticism that the U.S. response to the crisis in India is coming late?
Well, I will say first, the United States has been one of the largest providers of assistance to address the COVID pandemic around the world, including to India. And we have obviously taken some significant steps over the last couple of days to address their immediate needs and been in close touch with them at every level, including with Prime Minister and the President discussing or communicating. I will also say that we are continuing to fight a pandemic here. India and the United States have two of the highest highest challenges as it relates to fighting the COVID pandemic. So we also take that into account. But I can assure people who are watching and paying attention that we want to work in partnership with India. We are committed to getting them assistance they need, whether that's oxygen, PPE, therapeutics, tests, raw materials for vaccines, and we'll continue to communicate at the highest level.
Okay, and
Andrea.
oh, sorry.
Oh, did you have one more? Go ahead.
One more. Is the administration concerned about reports on the use of forced labor to produce polysilicon for solar panels in Xinjiang?
Let me check. I think we would be concerned, but let me check with our national security team and we'll get you a statement directly on that. Go ahead, Andrea.
I just had a kind of a clarification question. Previously, when you released doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine to Canada and Mexico,
We lent them.
You lent them. Is the loan program over? Are we into gifting now, or?
We are considering a range of options, and I expect as we put together our plan and we consider the range of requests we have and determine where we will be distributing these vaccines, we will do that through a range of means.
Okay, and then just on the overall issue of the kind of vaccine production in the U.S., there is, as you know, mounting pressure on the U.S. to support this TRIPS waiver at the WTO. Has there been any shift in the U.S. position? Up until now, the U.S. has not even permitted those discussions to take place on a formal level. Given what we're seeing now, the sort of worst case scenario of the increased incidence in India and Brazil, other places, is there a rethink going on? I understand that there's concern about the emergence of variants and not knowing that, what will happen to those. Are you rethinking the position now?
Well, I'd first say, and I know we'll have a call shortly where there'll be an opportunity to ask a lot of these questions too, but India has their own IP, right? And they are also manufacturer of vaccines. Some of it has been delayed. The last time we really communicated about this at a high level was from our USTR, Catherine Tai, but I don't have any updates to that.
And can I do one from a colleague?
Yeah.
You're sorry, I know you want to.
It's okay.
This is from VOA, who can't be here, obviously,
Sure.
because of COVID. Their question is, Ukrainian President Zelensky is suggesting including U.S. participation to try to end the Donbass war. Is the administration ready to take a more active role in the peace process, and if yes, what capacity?
Well, I would certainly point you to the State Department. They're probably the most appropriate entity to talk about our engagement and negotiations. We have been engaged in the past, as you know, and certainly we are in close touch with the leadership of Ukraine at a range of levels. The President himself has spoken with the President of Ukraine, and certainly the Secretary of State and others have spoken with their counterparts about what their needs are and how we can be effective partners. Thanks, everyone. You have 8 minutes until the call, so you're welcome.